Have you ever felt trapped in a psychological game that never began, but from which you could never escape? As if someone were manipulating your perception of reality, making you doubt your memory, your reason, your very essence. This someone has a name, and what drives them is more than ego. It's a hunger for control, a thirst for emotional power. We're talking about the narcissist. The narcissist doesn't just want to be admired, he wants to be adored. He needs your validation as if it were oxygen, but contrary to what many think, they're not invincible. There's a weak spot, a subtle crack in the armor of arrogance they've built. And today, you'll discover 5 simple but powerful actions that completely disarm them. These aren't aggressive words, they're not direct confrontation. They're gestures of clarity, decisions of someone who has regained their clarity, things they hate with all their might, because they threaten the illusory empire they've built over you. Throughout this video, we'll delve into the inner workings of the narcissist's mind. We'll reveal how these attitudes act like acid on the veneer of an inflated ego, and most importantly, we'll awaken within you a spiritual and rational awareness that will become both a shield and a sword against any attempt at manipulation. Don't think this is just another video about signs of narcissism. Here, the proposal is different. We go beyond the surface. We go to the point where the narcissist loses control, and you regain it. From now on, every word you hear will be like a light bulb lit in a dark room. Because when you understand the hidden rules of the game, you stop being a piece and become the whole board. Reason 1. True indifference. Nothing leaves a narcissist more disconcerted than realizing they no longer have the power to provoke any emotion in you. And when I say none, I mean none. Not anger, not sadness, not fear, genuine indifference, the kind that comes after a long journey of healing and awareness, is like pure poison to their ego, because the narcissist feeds on your reaction. And when you simply stop reacting, they starve. Imagine this. They launch a provocation, hoping you'll justify yourself, and you just watch, breathe, and move on with your life. Silence, in this context, speaks louder than any scream. And what echoes in silence is the loss of power. The narcissist feels this like an invisible punch. They can't process the idea that someone who was once under their control is now free. Truly free, because true emotional freedom isn't screaming that you're over it. It's not needing to prove anything anymore. It's not needing to respond. It's not caring. But be careful. Don't confuse indifference with forced coldness. Pretending you don't care is different from truly not caring. Pretending still keeps the narcissist at the center of your attention. True indifference happens when you turn your attention to yourself, to your journey, and the other person becomes just an irrelevant detail in a chapter that's already passed. It's when you stop reliving the story and start writing a new one. This is the difference between someone who is still emotionally trapped and someone who has already understood that it's no longer worth investing energy where it was only draining. The narcissist senses this in the tone of your voice, in your posture, in your choices, and they hate it. They hate it because they realize they've lost access to your soul, and when they lose that, there's nothing left to bind them to you. True indifference is the first major blow, because it reveals an emotional independence they tried to destroy. When you no longer respond to their provocations, when the chaos they try to create no longer affects you, you become untouchable. And the narcissist, who has always believed he has control over your emotions, finds himself faced with something he doesn't know how to manipulate: his new self. And here comes something even more powerful: spirituality. When you understand, within the Christian vision, that your identity is grounded in something greater than human opinions, no accusation touches you anymore. No devaluation defines you. The narcissist hates this, because for him, your worth should be determined by him. But when you understand that your worth is divine and non-negotiable, it becomes irrelevant, and it is at this moment that he collapses internally. Don't underestimate the power of your peace. The serenity with which you refuse to participate in the emotional game destroys more than any direct confrontation, because the narcissist thrives on war. And when you choose peace, you render him powerless. This is the silent weapon, and he doesn't know how to fight it. Reason 2, the brutal clarity of truth. There's something a narcissist fears more than being ignored, being seen. Because behind the facade of confidence, charm, and intelligence, what they try hardest to hide is who they really are. When you gain clarity about what's going on, when you understand the games, the patterns, the repetitions, and the cycles, you threaten the very thing that sustains their world: illusion. The narcissist operates in the shadows. They manipulate perception, distort facts, rewrite conversations, and plant doubts. They make you wonder if the problem isn't you. But when you start studying, seeking information, talking to people who have been through the same experiences, you begin to connect the dots. You begin to see the script repeating itself. And when you name what they do, you take away their power of mystery. Nothing disarms a manipulator more than the naked truth being laid bare before them, not aggressively, but with the calm firmness of someone who knows exactly what they're dealing with. You look them in the eye and say, "This is called gaslighting. This is blame shifting. This is emotional blackmail." And when you say this clearly, confidently, the narcissist feels the ground shake, because now they know you've snapped out of it, that you've stopped believing the distorted versions, and worse, that you can warn others. The truth in this case becomes a powerful weapon, but not a weapon of attack. It's a weapon of liberation, because the more aware you are, the less vulnerable you become, and the more aware you become, the more they lose their ability to control you. This clarity also changes the way you react, because when you understand how a narcissist works, you stop taking it personally. You realize they don't do what they do because you're weak, insufficient, or wrong. They do it because they need to dominate. They need to win. And when you understand this, you no longer join in the dance. You observe, you analyze, and you act strategically. The most interesting thing is that this clarity usually comes after the pain, after sleepless nights, tears, and existential crises. But it is precisely this process that forges an awakened mind. Awakening, however, requires courage, because the truth hurts, but it also liberates. And when you reach this stage, you stop being a toy. You become a player, or rather, you stop playing. And here comes a spiritual key. The light of truth is one of the purest manifestations of God's presence. When you pray for discernment, asking for wisdom, the masks fall. Intentions become visible, and you begin to sense in your spirit when something is wrong, even if you don't yet have all the proof. This kind of sensitivity is like a radar that protects your soul. The narcissist hates this, because until recently they could blind you with sweet words and intense looks. But now you see, and those who see never go back to being blind. This clarity changes everything, and those who carry the truth no longer bow to lies. Reason 3, emotional autonomy. The narcissist builds his web of control based on a silent premise, that you are emotionally dependent on him. And this can be so subtle that for a while you believe you need that validation, that occasional compliment, that feeling of being complete when he's around. But the truth is that this dependence was manufactured, and when you break this chain, you become unattainable. Emotional autonomy is like an earthquake in the narcissist's relational structure, because he always positions himself as the source of your self-esteem, your joy, your sense of worth. And suddenly you start to nourish yourself from other sources. You seek therapeutic help. You start talking to people he once pushed away. You reconnect with your faith, your identity, your own dreams. And this weakens him. But it's not just about walking away. It's about internalizing that you no longer need his permission to feel, decide, or exist. You no longer need that look in his eyes to know you're right. You no longer need that word to feel accepted. You no longer depend on his affection to feel love. You discover that love already exists within you and that he no longer has control over it. The narcissist hates this kind of discovery because he loses the ability to mold you with emotional blackmail. The manipulative phrases that once worked, "Without me, you're nothing. No one else will want you. You'll never find someone like me," now ring hollow. They sound ridiculous, and what once hurt now provokes laughter or silence. You no longer need to respond, because the answer is within you. This emotional autonomy also expresses itself in daily choices. When you stop justifying your decisions, when you start saying no without guilt, when you start setting clear boundaries without apologizing. The narcissist feels this as a direct attack, even if you're simply taking care of yourself, because he can't bear the thought of losing control, and your autonomy is living proof that he has lost it. There is something deeply spiritual about this process. When you understand, in the light of faith, that your identity is non-negotiable because it was given by God, not by a human being, you recover something that was dormant, a sense of purpose. And the narcissist has no power over someone who knows their purpose. They can try to humiliate you, ignore you, provoke you. But none of this penetrates someone who is grounded. Emotional autonomy is when what happens outside of you no longer determines what happens inside. It's when external chaos no longer generates an internal storm. And this is the greatest collapse you can cause in a narcissist's world. Because they finally see themselves as they truly are, irrelevant to your happiness, and that's where the game ends. Reason 4. Spiritual elevation. Few things are as threatening to a narcissist as someone who reconnects with something greater than their own suffering. When you turn to genuine faith, when you immerse yourself in a living, practical spirituality, you begin to access a source of strength that is completely beyond their reach. And this deeply destabilizes them because they realize that their influence over you is fading for a reason they cannot control. God. Spiritual elevation is not about becoming mystical or religious for appearances. It is about opening your eyes to a higher truth, one that redefines your pain, reframes your traumas, and restores your dignity. Christian spirituality, in this context, serves not as an escape but as a foundation. You begin to understand that there is an unbreakable value within you, a value that was not given by anyone and therefore cannot be taken away. This violently disarms the narcissist. Because while he tries to destroy you with words, you are being rebuilt by the word. While he tries to imprison you in fear, you find freedom in faith. And as you draw closer to God's presence, something changes in your posture, your speech, your gaze. You no longer need to shout your strength, it is felt, and the narcissist feels this as territory taken from him. Spiritual power, when true, brings about a visible change. You begin to discern before he even speaks. You begin to anticipate his movements. You sense in your spirit when you are being manipulated, and what's more, you feel peace in walking away without carrying guilt. Because now your compass is no longer the fear of losing someone. Your compass is the will to experience what God has for you, and that is non-negotiable. The narcissist hates this transformation because it no longer depends on him. He can try to attack, provoke, lie, dramatize, but you no longer respond the same way. You respond with silence, with prayer, with wisdom. And this attitude, which he considers a weakness, is actually your greatest strength, because now you are no longer alone. This spiritual connection also heals you from the inside out. Shame disappears. Fear disappears. The need for approval disappears because you begin to see yourself as God sees you. And this is a mirror the narcissist cannot bear. He wants you to remain broken, needy, dependent, but you are being restored. You are becoming whole, and a whole person no longer accepts emotional crumbs. This process of spiritual elevation is slow but steady, and the more you grow, the more the narcissist shrinks in your life. Until one day, he no longer has a place, and that day comes not because you defeated him in an argument, but because you have risen to a place where he cannot reach you. Reason 5. Refusal to play the game. A narcissist's entire power structure depends on one thing: that you keep playing. The game of provocation and reaction, the game of blame and distorted forgiveness, the game of emotional back and forth, the game where they dictate the rules and you try to adapt, hoping to be accepted, loved, or at least understood. But there comes a point, and it's transformative, when you simply stop. You no longer fight, you don't fight back, you don't explain. You leave the game. This is the final blow, because the narcissist needs the stage. They need the audience, they need the tension. Without it, they can't exist. When you refuse to participate in the unhealthy dynamic they've created, they lose everything. They lose control. They lose attention. They lose the narrative. And this is what they fear most: the loss of protagonism in your life. But be careful. Leaving the game isn't just about cutting contact. It's about severing the internal emotional bond. It's about stopping dreaming of change. It's about stopping hoping for regret. Stop trying to understand why. It's accepting that some people don't change because they don't want to, and that your role was never to save them, it was to save yourself. The narcissist hates this decision because it takes away the nourishment that sustained the cycle. They may try to provoke, pursue, test you. They'll use other people, appeal to your emotions, try to appear changed, but you no longer take the bait. You look and see everything as it is. No fantasy, no illusory hope, no hurt either, just awareness. And that's the end of the game. This refusal also redefines your future, because the energy that was previously spent trying to survive manipulation is now channeled into rebuilding yourself. You begin to invest in yourself, in your projects, in your spirituality, in your growth, and the more you grow, the more they shrink. The more you flourish, the more they wither, because the narcissist only lives in the realm of chaos, and you now inhabit the realm of peace. Here comes the highest principle of all: freedom. You were created to be free, and living under someone's emotional control is a subtle form of slavery. When you choose to no longer participate in the game, you are telling the world, God, and yourself that you refuse to live less than you were born to be. The narcissist can't bear to see someone they tried to destroy become stronger, clearer, and freer, because it confronts them with the failure of their own mission to dominate you. But you won. And winning, in this case, isn't about confrontation. It's about no longer being dependent. Refusing to play the game is their ultimate act of power, and they have no answer for it. In the end, it all comes down to a single choice: continue living under the control of someone who slowly destroys your essence, or stand up with dignity, look in the mirror, and say, I'm coming back to myself. Relationships with narcissists are like labyrinths. The more you try to understand, the more you get lost. And the most common mistake is believing that if you're good enough, patient enough, loving enough, they'll change. But they don't, because they don't want to change. The narcissist doesn't want healing. They want control. And the more you give in trying to rescue someone who doesn't want to be rescued, the deeper you sink. But today, with each point you've heard here, you are no longer the same person. Today you know that there is life outside the emotional prison, that there is strength even when everything seems to be in ruins, that freedom begins within when you say no to what destroys and yes to what restores. The moral of this journey is simple but powerful. You are not here to serve as a platform for anyone's ego. You were created to live with purpose, peace, and truth. And if someone needs to diminish you to feel great, they don't deserve a place on your path. You no longer need excuses or justifications. You simply need to take ownership of what is already yours, your freedom, your clarity, your faith. And every time you choose not to react, not to give in, not to fall into the trap, you are winning. Not for them, but for yourself, for your story, for your integrity, for your soul. Continue on this journey. Continue seeking knowledge, strengthening your spirituality, surrounding yourself with people who truly care about you. And above all, keep saying yes to what brings you closer to who you were called to be. The narcissist hates all of this, but you love it, and that's enough. Thank you for watching this video. We ask that you subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, turn on the notification bell to be notified of our posts. Until the next video.